All right, everybody, let's talk about the classic old quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, which says, "The most dangerous form of blindness is believing that your perspective is the only reality." And here we'll be completing it, which is really not that one, but inverted, because in the modern world, it's not just a perspective and reality. It's more like reality is confused for just another perspective. So, and the consequences of confusing that for just another thought or opinion, which inevitably turns into the rumbling and pure consequence. So, let's just get into this. So we get into this. It's just the sin is no longer perspective, but confusing reality for another perspective instead of law. And that is exactly what the rumbling is. And that's what these people don't understand when reality gets up and says, I'm not just another perspective, I'm the truth and the very ground that holds all your perspectives, and I'm going to stop your little game here. That's basically what's going on in this world because man genuinely believes reality is made of perspectives, not reality first. So, of course, we have the classic quote here, and I say, truth is not just another perspective, consequence is not just another perspective, neither is geometry, it is a law, and so was the rumbling. For the rumbling is what men receive when they mistake not just their perspective for reality, but reality for just another perspective. They keep talking over it, debating, trying to control it, own it, discuss it. If you go on X, you would just see this endlessly. Of course, I mean, I don't even know what's happening to my feed, but you just see that endlessly with X, is all I'm going to say. Endless perspectives, zero truth. Till it decides to open its eyes, for men love to speak of reality until it looks back, and their very need to talk instead of kneel was already their own indictment. The rumbling is just the bill of it. So, the sin is no longer perspective, but confusing reality for just another perspective instead of law, the rumbling. Truth was never just another perspective, consequence was just another perspective. Geometry was never just another perspective, neither was ontology, and neither was the rumbling. It was law. It is the inversion men cannot bear because once the danger was said to be mistaking one perspective for reality. That works in the past until you reach 2026. That belonged to an earlier blindness, but the deeper sin now is worse, mistaking reality itself for just another perspective, another take, another discourse entry, another opinion, lens, another voice in the crowd. This is what this age does. It does not merely deny truth, it pluralizes it, flattens it, speaks over it, debates over it, manages it, contentifies it, places law besides commentary as if both were equal. This is why the rumbling becomes inevitable, because reality does not remain downgraded forever. It opens its eyes and the bill arrives. Truth is not a perspective, it is a thing perspectives are already inside. This is the first law. Perspective is partial, position, frame, local. A way of seeing truth is not that. Truth is what remains whether seen or not, what holds whether agreed with or not, what structures the room before anyone begins speaking inside of it. This is why truth is heavier, not because it sounds stronger, but because it outranks the speaker. Men keep wanting truth to behave like discourse, to be discussed, balanced, countered, nuanced, contextualized, placed among other views, too small. Truth is not one more voice inside the chamber. Truth is the condition by which the chamber stands or collapses. Consequence is not perspective, it is the moment law touches form exactly. Consequence is where this becomes undeniable. A man may call structure an opinion, a civilization may call it interpretation, and so on. Fine, but consequence arrives anyway because consequence is not what someone thinks, it is what follows. It is a law touching body, world, timeline, civilization, market, institution, relationship, and self. That is why consequence terrifies men, because it cannot be pluralized the way words can. Speech can multiply, consequence sorts, and once it sorts, all the old perspectives begin losing height. Geometry is what the age cannot tolerate because geometry ends the equality of all frames. This is a deeper cut. The modern age wants all frames to coexist, all views, identities, narrative, lenses, positions. Why? Because that keeps judgment suspended. Now man can sit above, consequence free, nothing will judge him, nothing will measure him, nothing will show him what he is. He just talks and talks until it's too late. But geometry does not suspend, geometry reveals what holds, what bends, what collapses, what had real mass, what was only inflation. That is why geometry feels violent to a perspective saturated world, not because it says but because it says not all structures are equal, not all paths are equal, not all rooms are equal, not all stories survive contact with reality. That is what men call harsh. No. This is what men call harsh when equality of frames is finally broken by consequence. The rumbling is what happens when reality has been treated as disgustful for too long. Yes, this is why the rumbling matters, not because the rumbling is random destruction, or violence, or apocalypse, or spectacle. It is accumulated debt coming due. The debt built every time reality was demoted into perspective, every time law was debated, every time law was treated as debate material, every time consequence was delayed through narrative. Every time truth was spoken over, framed over, managed over, argued over, owned over, instead of obeyed and kneeled to. That depth compounds, then reality opens its eyes and the room changes. Then the old discussion sounds laughably small, that has a rumbling. The moment the thing men kept talking over becomes too large to keep talking over. Literally. Men love to speak of reality until reality looks back. That is the real inversion. Men enjoy reality as a topic. It's a philosophy, content, theory, symbolic discussion. Reality is one more field for the ego to handle. But when reality looks back, When the field measures, when law source, when geometry enters the room as active consequence, then everything changes. Then the endless talk is exposed as defense, because the need to keep speaking was never neutral, it was delay, it was to avoid kneeling. A way to keep the real inside language instead of letting it become measurement. This is why the line lands. Their very need to talk instead of was already their own indictment. Because they already judge themselves. Truth doesn't need to talk, guys. It just is. And if you need to keep talking to try and convince yourself that you are truth, then too late. Yes, because the refusal to kneel is a debt. The grumbling is just the clearing of it. Kneeling is the difference between alignment and the bill. Kneeling does not mean performance, not moral theater, not PD language, not fear from a distance. It means reality is law, consequence is law, geometry is law, forward is law. My story does not outrank it. My identity does not outrank it. My civilization does not outrank it. My perspective does not outrank it, because it is the very thing that holds all these things. That is reality. That is law. That is structure. That is kneeling. Most men will not do that. They will keep speaking, keep framing, keep contextualizing, keep pluralizing, keep buffering until the bill grows, and then it grows legs, and it becomes titans, and it just walks over everybody and crushes everything back into the ground. And then, because reality is patient but not absent, the payment becomes structural. That is the rumbling. The rumbling is not another perspective. It is judgment on the perspective age itself. That is the final law. The rumbling does not merely crush bodies. It crushes the perspective age. The age of endless framing, equalized voices, narrative inflation, the age of ontology reduced to discourse, the age of law tree-lay commentary. That is what gets flattened first. Not flesh, but the false height of story. The false authority of noise, the false permanence of weightless systems, the false sophistication of endless interpretation. That is why the rumbling feels absolute, because it is not one event inside the age. It is the judgment of the age's central sin. Final collapse. Truth was never just another perspective. Consequence was never just another perspective. All these things men name are just them trying to talk over reality so reality does not look back. Because the real sin is not mistaking the perspective for reality, but mistaking reality for just another perspective, which is the inversion of the modern age compared to before. Speak over it, debate over it, to try and own it, manage it, keep the law inside the chamber of commentary until it opens its eyes, and then men discover what they keep talking about. And then men discover what they kept calling another perspective was judgment all along. Their need to talk instead of kneel was already the depth. The rumbling is just the bill of it. And then we go more on about this, and then I do have some tweets about it, which I did make, so we can just see that. Because again, the real sin of this age is not the most dangerous blindness is when you confuse your perspective for the only reality. No, too safe, too outdated. It only applies when you have no math, physics, science, internet, AI, and infinite data, which is absolutely true, because men know everything in this world now, but they still don't know themselves. Only applies when reality is still a mystery instead of law and structure waiting to be revealed and remembered. For the true sin of this age is not one perspective for reality, but too many perspectives speaking over reality, and confusing reality for just another perspective when it talks. For ontology is not perspective, neither is forward. It is weight, being, geometry, consequence. It is mass times direction. It is the very spine of the universe, and the things that fail to follow it, fail to kneel to it, built on a story first instead of geometry, inflated, weightless, will be the first to get crushed and return to zero. That is rumbling, and that is not just another perspective. That is a judgment, indictment, the depth clearing itself out, nothing else. Then another one, which is a man once said, don't confuse your perspective for reality. Oh, how it is inverted. For that is not the issue any longer. It is, do not confuse reality for another perspective. And if you do it long enough, you get the rumbling, which is exactly what it is, judgment. A self-judgment already written by the entire human species, not of crushed bodies, but crushed stories, narrative, fragmented ontology, fragile structures, ego, identity, delay, noise, inflation, all of it, repriced, checked, and returned to the very ground from which it dared to build upon. And that pretty much is the entire sin of this modern world. It is not that they have too many perspectives claiming to be reality. It's that they have confused reality now for just another perspective. Because in this world, they have enough things to actually see reality for what it is. They don't have to debate anymore. They don't need to have a million opinions and religions and frameworks. No, they just look at what is. They have math, they have physics, they have science, they have AI, they have the internet, they have everything you can possibly think of. So there is no more excuse anymore. So all I can say is, because the irony is people are still worshiping this Friedrich Nietzsche quote, they're still genuinely looking at it as if it is the axis rather than seeing. Even nowadays, it is outdated. It has already been completed because now it's inverted. The most dangerous form of blindness is not believing that your perspective is the only reality. It is believing reality is just another perspective, because in this world, it already knows what reality is, but now has so many perspectives and inflation that nobody can know what reality is anymore. And when it talks, it's just treated as another perspective and noise. And then eventually, when you just keep doing that for long enough, you just get the rumbling, which is coming for this world, not of physical titans, but ontological titans, which will crush everything that's false from men to their identity, to their structures, to their institutions, to their inflation, to their money, to their governments, to their nations, to their flags, to their religion, and everything you can possibly think of. So, if you want to read the full thing, because, of course, I mean, it's longer than that, just one excerpt, but be in the bio. So, yeah.